now it's recording because I accidentally pressed the button. Oh. Hey everybody, I'm so excited to be back here in Hood River making these videos for you. I'm here for the summer and then I'm going back to Ireland where I'm actually going to be teaching at Ballymaloe Cookery School. Super stoked, it's a great opportunity, but in the meantime I'm very excited to be sharing with you some of the delicious foods that we made over there. As always, be sure to check out my Patreon where I have exclusive content and polls to choose what I'm going to cook next and stuff like that. Also, be sure to like and subscribe and ring that notification bell so that you know when I'm coming out with some new, fresh stuff. Well, it's still cold here in Hood River, so it's a great opportunity to make some heartwarming stew. Today, we're going to be making Haricot, or navy beans, with tomato and rosemary. It's a delicious stew that packs a whole bunch of flavor. We will be using dried beans, however, you can use canned beans in a pinch. You just get to infuse it with a little bit more flavor when you use the dried beans. If you're in a bind and you want to do this stew but you only have canned beans, that's totally fine. It's actually very quick and simple, about a 30-minute process from start to finish. I already have my beans soaking from yesterday, so let's go over the ingredients and get cooking.
Alright, let's get started. 225 grams or 8 ounces of dry haricot beans, soaked overnight and drained. We have parsley stems, celery stalk, thyme, bay leaf. That makes up your bouquet garni. We have a carrot, halved, 1 onion, halved, half an onion, diced, garlic, crushed, rosemary, chopped, can of diced tomatoes, a little turbinado sugar, salt, pepper, oil, and parsley for garnish. And we put the beans in the pot. Add your bouquet garni, your onion, which you might need to chop to fit in your small pot. Carrot might need to be chopped as well. Quart of water. And go ahead and put that on the stove with a sweet transition. We'll do medium-high heat to bring that up to a boil. So this whole process is going to take anywhere from 30 to 60 minutes to cook these beans till they're just kind of fork tender. So I brought this up to a boil, I dropped it down to a simmer, gave it a little stir, and then I'm going to put the lid back on with just a little bit of gap there. Checking the beans at about 40 minutes here. Just fork tender, you can see those beans just start to split. And now I'm going to season it with a couple generous pinches of salt. Now we're going to stir that salt in and start removing all of those large format vegetables. They've done their job. And now we begin the precarious operation of straining out the bean liquid here. We're going to be using this later in the stew, so just save that off to the side. On a medium heat, we're going to put some olive oil in the bottom of the pan, just enough to coat the onions that we're going to toss in there. Once that's nice and hot, sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. We're going to put those onions in, stir them around, and I like to add some pepper. I kind of season along as I go, mostly with pepper to begin with, just to kind of get that spice profile in there, and then I kind of hold off on the salt until it's reduced to the consistency that I want, because I don't want the salt to get too strong. So we're sweating the onions. We're not trying to get color on them, so the way that we do that is with a lid, and that was about 8 minutes or so of sweating the onions. Now I'm adding the chopped garlic, a little bit more pepper. And we're going to sweat that down for another like 3 or 4 minutes. The onions are nice and translucent at this point. Now I'm going to hit it with the salt. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 turns on the salt shaker. That'll do. Add our diced tomatoes. I use a little bit of the bean water to rinse out the can. I just think that that's kind of an effective way to get the last of the tomatoes and start using the bean water. So I'm going to save that off to the side. Add in the rosemary. Nice stirring. There's my beans. Beans are going in. You can still see that they're pretty whole, so I don't like to stir too vigorously with these beans. You want to keep them whole. You don't want to get like a really starchy stew, right? So just be gentle with them. And here you can tell that I just use enough bean water to kind of get the water up to the level of the beans. We'll bring those up to a boil. I'm gonna stir, see how they're doing. Now keep in mind, your beans are cooked at this point, so we're just kind of trying to bring those flavors together, cook the tomatoes a little bit. I can tell already that this is going to be needing a lot of salt. I mean a lot. A little bit more pepper. And a small pinch of sugar. They use sugar a lot with these recipes at Ballymaloe, I noticed, and they're using tinned tomatoes that are pretty generic. So those tomatoes have a high acidity and that sugar just kind of softens it up. These Muir organic diced tomatoes, they are not super acidic, so it really doesn't need a whole lot. I gave it just a tiny pinch of turbinado. And now I'm tasting, seasoning, and all I'm really looking for here is to taste all these elements, right? I should be tasting tomato, I should be tasting rosemary. And as you can tell with how much salt I'm putting in it right now, I can't really taste anything. So tasting, seasoning until finally perfection. Now we're gonna do a little plating. Did not choose the perfect plates for this probably should have been a bowl. There was definitely a lot of scraping while we ate this meal, but I just wanted to kind of show off the beans. You can see how they're whole and they're beautiful. I used a little bit of chopped parsley there to garnish finally with a little bit of pepper. I also added lemon zest the second time around making this meal, and I thought that was delicious. But there she is. She's beautiful, she's done, she's complete. Well done.